Before a student exits high school, any student, be a student with special education, a student that's just in gen ed that does not receive special education services, before they leave high school, they have to have completed their prescribed course of study. That's how the California law at least phrases it. So each state is going to have their requirements for what a student has to accomplish before they can leave high school. Have you completed the necessary units in the necessary subjects? Did you get passing grades in those classes? Do you have sufficient credits to graduate? Those are the prescribed course of study. For our kiddos with IEPs, some of them are on that same prescribed course of study, right? They're working towards getting a high school diploma. They just have extra supports and accommodations and services along the way. For others of our students, they're not working towards a high school diploma. They're not on what we call diploma track. They're more on a certificate track is the phrasing that's usually used in our geographic area. Certificate rather than diploma track. So their prescribed course of study becomes their ITP. So within their IEP, the ITP is literally part of the IEP. I'll say that again because there's a lot of letters there. The ITP becomes part of the IEP, and for some of our students, it replaces the state prescribed course of study. For others, it adds to the prescribed course of study because they're still working towards the state standards. Now, if they are receiving special education services, they also have to have transition services. Those are built into their ITP as well. Those are services meant to help them. What can the district provide now while they're still registered with the school district? What services can the district provide to help them be prepared for that time where they are no longer registered with the school district and no longer eligible to receive services through the school district? We have to be starting to think about that day when they're not going to be able to just go to class anymore. What is that day going to look like for them? Is it going to look like going to groups? Is it going to look like staying home all day? Are they going to go to work? Is it going to be a blend of a little bit of everything? Things like that. So that's what we're talking about tonight is what are those transition services and what is that prescribed course of study that they have to complete before they're eligible, before they exit high school. Sorry, I just saw a question here. What about making the IEP a 504 at time of graduation if going on to college? So if your child is, and I'm just going to talk about this briefly, IEPs are only in the primary education. So it's elementary school, middle school, and high school. That's when we have legal rights to the IEP. Now, there are, when we get to the end of class today, I'm going to talk about how your child might be eligible to stay in the district for services through the age of 22. But if they're going on to college, colleges are not required to follow IDEA. So they are not required to put together an IEP. They are, however, governed by equal protection laws, such as the Rehabilitation Act of 504. So if they're receiving federal funds, and most of our colleges do, or state funds, any governmental funds, they're not allowed to discriminate based on disability, which means they have to account for how your child's disability affects them. So it's going to look a lot like a 504 plan, but they have to put together some sort of accommodations for your student. So that would be something to work with your team on. How can we how can we teach the student? That actually could be part of the ITP, teaching the student to go and self-advocate for some of those services that they might need when they're in college. And that's something, thank you for asking that, Kristen. I will try and address that throughout tonight in a couple of different places, how we can utilize the ITP to get them prepared for college. But the IEP has to include an ITP no later than when the child turns 16 years old. So that means before their 16th birthday, they have to have an ITP. So if they're having, let's say they turn 16 in May, and you're having the IEP meeting in June, and they're going to turn 16 the next May, that June IEP should have an ITP in it, because your next annual, they're going to turn 16 before the next annual IEP, which will be the following June, right? Even though it's still 11 months out, it's still within that time frame of when you could possibly not have another IEP meeting. So the IEP, the annual IEP meeting that you're holding before the child is going to turn 16 should include the ITP. Now that's the absolute latest it should be in there. It can be in there earlier if the team agrees that it's appropriate. Okay, so what is the ITP? It's a written plan. It should contain appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals. So let's talk about what that means. It means the goals beyond high school. What is it that they hope to be prepared and able to do when they exit out of the school district? So when the school district is no longer responsible to provide services for them, what is it that the student wants to learn how to do? Is it attend college and be successful in, passing my classes at college? Is it get a job? Is it learn how to catch the bus so that I can go to McDonald's by myself? Whatever it is, those types of things are the things we should be making those goals for. So the goals are literally going to say, upon completion of high school, I will have the skills necessary to attend college successfully and pass my courses, something like that. It also, besides just telling us what we hope this outcome is, right? This outcome of when they leave high school, in addition to our outcome, desired outcome, we're also going to list transition services that are necessary to assist the student in reaching those goals. So we're going to talk a lot more about this tonight, but think about that goal of, I want to be able to successfully attend my college courses with passing grades. Well, what services do we need to give them right now in high school in order to help them be able to do that? It's going to have to be a lot more than just learning how to apply to a college, because a lot of high schools will do that. Districts will say, well, we'll help them learn how to apply to college. Great, that's one step. They have to get into college to successfully pass college courses, true. But what else do they need? That's not enough. Just learning how to research what college I want to go to and apply to different colleges is not enough. If the child gets in, what skills do they need to be able to succeed in college? And that's the kind of things we want to look at, are the services they need now. Maybe they need to learn how to organize their own homework assignments, because in college, teachers aren't going to give you lots of reminders, right? They need to learn how to do research on the computer so they can research topics that are assigned to them in college, whatever. Things like that are what we need to think about while they're still in high school, to give them the skills necessary to actually live the goal they said they want to do when they exit high school. So when, I've already talked about this, no later than the first IEP that will be effective when the child turns 16. It can be younger if the team determines that that is appropriate for the student. So an ITP team is like an IEP team, but it's expanded. So we include the same people that were in the IEP, but now we're looking at not just a district representative. And if you remember from our earlier class, we talked about that representative needs to be knowledgeable about the resources of the district and authorized to make decisions on behalf of the district, to be able to say yes or no, that's something we can do, or no, we won't do that. There also should be, in an ITP, there should be somebody, and they may have a totally different title, right? This is not, they don't have to have this title, but they need to fall in the category of being something along the lines of a district transition specialist. Somebody who knows not just about the district's programs, but specifically knows about the district's transition programs. What partnerships do they maybe have with businesses in the community that maybe have job sharing programs, or with the city's busing program? Maybe they have an agreement there to allow students to learn how to catch the bus with an aide or something, right? So there has to be somebody from the district who's familiar with what is required to help a student be prepared to transition, and the resources of the district to help them do that. Now, it may be that that transition specialist is the same person as the district rep. That's fine. They don't have to be separate people, but there should be somebody at the meeting who can meet the demands of both of these categories. Now, you also have the right to have the Department of Rehabilitation invited to your meeting, at least here in California. So the Department of Rehabilitation is set up to help adults with disabilities have employment skills and find employment. And so if there's something they may be able to assist in, even if it's just letting you know what kinds of programs your child needs to be ready to participate in when they leave high school, What skills would help them to learn now so that the Department of Rehab can say, yeah, come join our program. This would be a good one for you. Having them at the meeting can be helpful for that. So the way the law is written, and I've got the citation here if you'd like to write it down here, at least in California, California Code of Regulations. It states that you have the right to request that the school district invite the Department of Rehabilitation to your IEP meeting. So I've actually done this with my own son. I have included that when I signed the form saying I'm going to attend his IEP meeting. I just included the citation to these sections here and said that I was requesting per these statutes that the district invite the Department of Rehabilitation to our IEP meeting. And I have been told by other parents that when they've done this, nobody came. At my meeting, somebody did come. Now, maybe that's because I'm an attorney. I don't know if they took extra steps to do that or if it just happened that they were able to come the day we had our meeting. I really have no idea, but they were there. You also have the right to have any related service providers there. So maybe, let's say, for example, you know of a little mom and pop shop in town, or even a big one, a big corporation, but you know of a business in town that is willing to hire individuals with disabilities on a job training type of basis. And you're hoping that maybe they can work with the school district to allow part of your child's school day to be going to that business and learning a job related skill. They can come to your IEP meeting. I mean, if you invite them, it fits in their schedule, right? But legally, you have the right to invite them to be there, to discuss the possibility of working with the school district. So if you know of any other related service providers, now here in California, that's also going to include the regional center, right? If your child is a client of a regional center, you should probably invite your regional center service coordinator that's assigned to your child to come to your IEP meeting, that include, especially the ones that include the ITP. Because when the district is no longer responsible for providing services, now you can turn to the regional center if your child's a client and see if there's services they might be able to provide to help meet your child's needs. So they are going to be a related service provider quite possibly after your child leaves high school. Other people to think about are maybe a mental health provider if that's going to be a concern, a school psychologist, and then of course the teachers, the gen ed teacher, the special education teacher, and always we're going to include the parent. And we should always include the student whenever it's appropriate. So regardless of whether it's an ITP or an IEP, if the student could participate, they should be at the IEP meeting. And I think I mentioned this before. If I didn't, I apologize, I'll mention it now. Even if your child, maybe they can only attend the IEP meeting for about 10 minutes. That's all they can pay attention for, then they're gonna lose it after that. Maybe they just attend for 10 minutes and you make arrangements for somebody to come pick them up early. I have had a client in the past who he had something extremely important that he wanted to share with the team, but he knew that he didn't want to sit in this boring meeting. So he literally came in, gave his little speech that he had prepared. He wrote it out. He just stood up there and he read it. He wanted the team to know what was important to him. And he asked, please keep all of this in consideration, but I have to leave, but this is what I want you to know that is important to me. So that's appropriate at any level of an IEP, even if they're in kindergarten. It's important to have them there if they could contribute to the meeting. Now let's take that in light of an ITP. An ITP takes student participation and jumps it up a bunch of notches. Student participation becomes of the utmost importance in an ITP because we're literally supposed to find out what it is that they want to do when they're no longer going to school all day or no longer going to high school, right? It could be that they now want to go to college and they're now going from high school to college, and that's fine too. But we really want to find out what it is that they want to do after they leave high school. And so they become extra important members of the IEP. Their participation should be there at the ITP level, no matter how impacted by their disability they are. So even my own son, who is extremely limited in his ability to talk to a team or to think about what he wants to be when he grows up, we still did lots of assessments to try and get his input before the meeting to figure out what it is that he liked about his day when he wasn't in school. What were some of the things he maybe saw himself doing in the future? And we'll talk a little bit about more about that as we move along.